Happiness is a difficult thing to measure, but one initiative at the United Nations has been trying to figure it out. Every year since 2012, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network has published its World Happiness Report, a study that examines the connections between happiness and development, all while encouraging policymakers to place more emphasis on the former. Around 1,000 people in each UN member state rate their quality of life on a scale from 0 to 10, while researchers cull data from 6 areas: GDP per capita, life expectancy, social support, trust and corruption, perceived freedom to make life decisions, and generosity. The World Happiness Report 2022 was just released, and while the results follow previous trends, the list is a little more interesting because of COVID-19. The report paid special attention to evaluate how different governments have supported citizens' happiness before, during, and likely after the pandemic. 10. New Zealand. New Zealand has had one of the lowest rates of COVID-related deaths during the pandemic, cementing its spot in the top 10. Even without that timestamp, Kiwis are a famously happy and friendly bunch, which stems from satisfaction in both the workplace and social spheres. Having a prime minister who prioritizes emotional and mental growth certainly doesn't hurt either. In 2019, Jacinda Ardern introduced a well-being budget, which allocated billions of dollars towards initiatives like bolstering mental health, reducing child poverty, and supporting the Maori and Pacifica populations. 9. Israel. After placing 12th last year, Israel has finally broken into the top 10 in 2022. The country's response to the pandemic instilled a lot more government trust among citizens, as it was one of the first nations to successfully vaccinate a large percentage of its population. Israel also happens to be one of the healthiest countries in the world, with the lowest number of diet-related deaths, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, etc. in the entire world. 8. Norway. There's not too much to complain about in Norway. The mix of a well-integrated government welfare system and a thriving economy built on responsible management of its natural resources, good riddance, fossil fuel-powered cars, means that very few are left behind, and the feelings of social support, trust in government, and economic well-being that come from that all contribute to overall happiness. 7. Sweden. Sweden had the highest number of COVID-related deaths among all the Nordic countries, which may account for its drop from the 6th to the 7th spot this year. Still, it remains one of the happiest countries in the world thanks in large part to a high GDP per capita. An emphasis on social equality that is built into the education system starting in kindergarten, 16 months of paid family leave that can be split between a couple after a new child is welcomed into a family, and free daycare also makes Sweden the best country for women, according to a separate study. Basically, an emphasis on work-life balance leads to a happier populace. 6. Luxembourg. With a population under 600,000, this small country offers high salaries and a strong social security system to help its citizens after retirement. But before you jump to the conclusion that money is actually buying happiness in Luxembourg, the country has many other perks that have nothing to do with cash, including a great healthcare system and excellent work-life balance, probably due to the mandatory 5 weeks of vacation time. 5. Netherlands. The biggest stat from the Netherlands this year? That its happiness levels have barely changed. We're talking less than 0.03% between 2005 and 2021. And in the Netherlands, it turns out, happiness starts young. A 2013 UNICEF report rated Dutch children the happiest in the world, based on a number of metrics related to educational well-being, safety, and health. 4. Switzerland. Switzerland, which dropped 1 spot this year, is a country where everything is voted on, from how many vacation days workers should have to how many immigrants should be allowed into the country, and referendums down to the local level happen many times a year. This system of direct democracy means that Swiss citizens feel an unparalleled sense of participation in their country's evolution. The Swiss are known to be insular, and it can be off-putting to first-time visitors, but there is a strong social fabric held together by a belief that every voice matters, which can go a long way toward feeling content. 3. Iceland. Iceland ranks high in terms of the proportion of respondents who said they felt like they had a fellow citizen to count on when the going gets rough. This perhaps became most obvious in the wake of the country's post-2007 financial collapse and subsequent revitalization. You'd think that the perpetual flood of American tourists into Reykjavik might have dealt a blow to the residents' happiness. It's got to be a little harder to get the dinner reservation than it used to be, after all, but when it comes to well-being, the Icelanders are unfazed. Perhaps it has something to do with the fact that they can always escape the city to a countryside that looks like another planet. 2. Denmark. Denmark remained in the number 2 spot this year. The country rates near the top in all the reported metrics, life expectancy, social support, and generosity among them, but it is also a country hugely committed to renewable energy production. 39.1% of its energy was wind generated in 2014. A recent study from the Copenhagen-based Happiness Research Institute, whose existence is probably reason enough for a top spot, narrows down Denmark's happiness to a number of different categories, including trust in the government, economic security, freedom, civil participation, and work-life balance. 1. Finland. For the 5th year in a row, Finland is number 1 when it comes to happiness. The country consistently ranks among the top education systems in the world, occasionally beaten out by countries like South Korea, Japan, and Singapore. Much of that success comes from a widespread reverence for teachers, who are required to have a master's degree, their education is state-funded, and a pedagogical system that focuses less on quantitative testing and more on experiential learning and equal opportunity.